Good morning, everyone. Welcome to SAHPRA's Regulatory Technical Forum inaugural meeting. Just to notify, we will be starting at 9:05, just to allow all the participants to come in, and also for our CEO to do the opening. Thank you.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. We still have some people joining, so maybe we can start in, say, 2 minutes. Dogozo, can you confirm that you can hear me?
We can hear you, thanks.
Okay. Okay, I think in the interest of time, let me have my camera off. Good morning, everyone. Again, thank you for being available for this regulatory technical forum. You can keep that slide on, Dogozo. Thank you for joining us and welcome to all of you. I see that this is a meeting that's well attended. We're sitting with about 613 or so people. So I do hope that it would be valuable to yourself. Before we go into the agenda and I talk maybe around some changes, Dogozo, I don't know if you want to just take us through how we will run this meeting. Happy.
Yeah.
So also, if you want, so you can advise.
Okay. We first have, just give me a sec, sorry.
So in terms of housekeeping, yes, there we go. You've got the slide up.
Okay, so we will have all mics muted of our attendees during all the presentations. And if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A section. The chat section will be disabled. So we'll have the Q&A and we'll have most of your answers, your questions answered. Thanks. And then at the end of all the presentations, we will enable microphones just to have some sort of engagement between the speakers and the attendees. Thank you.
Thank you, Ntokozo. Yeah, and the team will, in the Q&A section, the team, when you ask questions, they will respond to those. And also after every presentation, I'll ask the team wherein they were not able to respond to any question on the Q&A to do so. And at the end, then we'll open it up for any other questions. Okay, thank you. Can we then have the agenda projected, please? Thank you. Thanks, Mukona. So we do have quite a jam-packed agenda as always. There's a number of matters we would like to discuss with you. I'll give some context around why we now have what we call the Regulatory Technical Forum. I'll also talk about an expression of interest that we will be publishing quite soon. Then we have Kristalna and Silvarani, who will talk to item 4 for you. And then Alice will touch on some updates regarding the veterinary sector. And from there, we'll give a very brief update from Kaiser on complementary medicines. It'll be quite brief. If you can just scroll down, Mukona. Thank you. And then from there, we'll hand over to Dion. There's been quite a few developments in the inspectorate and regulatory compliance area that we will then discuss and share with you. And then we'll move on to medical devices and IVDs, as well as Redcon, which Dimakato will speak to. And then lastly, we'll give you some feedback on guidelines. Just scroll down. There's quite a number of guidelines that we will talk to. Need to scroll down, please. And then Kristalna will talk on IT-related matters. Okay, great. So maybe I could start then, just to give some context. Many of you would have been familiar with what we call the ITG meeting. But after engagement with a number of you, it was clear that ITG may not necessarily represent everyone in this industry that we regulate. And so we then made a decision to change the format and what we call these engagements that we have with industry. We now call it the Regulatory Technical Forum. And you will see from the agenda that it really discusses operational matters such as these guidelines. We'll be talking about developments in each of the respective areas. And so it is technical in nature, it is operational in nature. Very different to what we call the Captains of Industry meeting, which is a more strategic platform, wherein, as the name says, we discuss the strategic matters. With the RTF, as I chair it, we will be having it quarterly, and the agenda is premised on the fact that there are working groups that meet, however frequently. I understand that there's also been terms of reference that have been put in place for these working groups. And that's where you as industry would engage with the respective senior manager for each of these areas. You'll discuss a number of these in detail. So wherein there's still a matter that's being deliberated at a working group level, we're not going to elevate it to this fora. Matters that we will bring to this fora are where we need to give updates to a broader stakeholder, but also matters wherein I then needed to step in assisting us arrive at a decision. And so while it's a technical meeting, it is on the assumption that there's a lot more that takes place at a working group. So we're not going to cover every single matter pertaining to that working group. So let's say the CAMS working group, you could be dealing with a number of issues that may not necessarily come here. And we will leave those to the working group. The senior managers do have authority to make decisions at those working groups. So my assumption is that a lot of the operational matters really get resolved at a working group level. This should be a forum where we give updates on some of the critical issues, matters such as guidelines, etc., that cover a broader stakeholder. So I do hope that you'll find this platform helpful going forward. As I say, I'm very happy looking at the number of attendees that we have, because it is intended to attract a broader audience in the sector that we regulate. So it would be CAMS, medical devices and IVDs, radiation control, medicines, and everything else that we do. So I really hope that you'll find this platform helpful. Please, after this meeting, I'm happy to receive feedback from yourselves in terms of how we've structured it and whether it meets your expectations. So you can share that feedback with Mokwana. Okay, and we will then share the minutes of this discussion. My office is the Secretariat. Will share the minutes of this meeting with you in due course. Okay, so that's on the Regulatory Technical Forum. And then if I could move to item 3, and let me just see if there's any questions. So there's a question here that when will the revised TORs be made available to the working groups? Khonze, if you can respond to that in the chat, please, because we have reviewed those terms of reference. I certainly have seen them. And so Khonze will comment on that. Will we be making the recording available? Are we recording? Yes, we are. And our comms team will make this available. Someone was saying there's no sound. Oh my goodness. Let's just see. Are you able to hear me? I just saw some hands going up, so I'm assuming that people can hear me. Yeah, people are able to hear me. Is it? Okay. So to the people who are struggling, Philip, Denise, etc., Karen, maybe just check your system. Sorry, I'm at a meeting, so you'll hear some background noise. I had to step out of that meeting for this, so apologies. Okay, great stuff. All right, so then to move to item 3, we are going to need your help regarding item 3. So we've been undergoing or working with a range of stakeholders under the AMRH, which is the African Medicine Regulatory Harmonization Forum, but also working with other regulators, in this case specifically BFARM and others, really, wherein we have our technical team being trained. And one of the things that came out as we were rolling out this training is that, you know, it's great, and while we discuss some of the concepts of regulation, and the team is trained, etc. But what the faculty or the individuals that are working with us had highlighted is that if we could get what we call model dossiers or sample dossiers that we can utilize for training purposes, this would help a lot, because whether I would be doing quality training, it may be bioequivalence training or clinical assessment training. When the teams have access to a real dossier, it would go a long way in really applying the principles that they are learning. And so we have put in place an expression of interest that we plan to publish sometime before end of May. And this is really to solicit your support, that if you have, even if it's an old dossier, preferably in a CTD format, relatively old, and you can, redact any IP related matters. But if you can share that with us for training purposes, purely for training, in the expression of interest, we've indicated that this would be for typically African regulators. We are issuing this expression of interest together with AMRH, and in this case, BFARM. And so I just thought I'll raise it here so that when you do see it published on our website, you would have the context. And really, it's to ensure that we can roll out very practical and very experience-driven training to our staff members. This will not be limited to SAHPRA. Typically, these training programs cover more, more regulators. It would typically be a handful plus minus. And so we really solicit your support, and I hope that you can assist us with this. And for those of you who will respond, we will then meet with you, indicate exactly what it is that we require. And as I say, please, anything that pertains to IP, etc., we would certainly not want to have it as part of the if you're not comfortable to share it as part of this training, as part of this dossier that you would make available for training purposes. Okay, so that's that briefly. Let me just go to the Q&A and see if there's any questions around that. Yeah, so can you give a dossier of products that have recently been deregistered? Yes, you can. As long as they contain all the modules that are required, that will help a lot. So this is for medicines. Apologies, this is for medicines. We will, I'm sure, in future issue another EOI for medical devices. So this is medicines. If you can, if there are any for biological products, that would be great. Yeah, if you have any for biologicals, that would be great, indeed. So this training is training that for now has been geared, because we would be utilizing another entity's dossier. I think wherein we're rolling out a training that includes that, I would prefer that we don't include industry, because again, you would be giving this to us in confidence for the purpose of training NRA staff, for the purpose of only the NRA. And so I would, no, we're not including industry in this one. There's other training that we roll out that doesn't require, access to a dossier, etc., like the clinical assessor course that we've just had, and we had industry participate in that. In that case, that's fine. Industry can, but in this case where we will be utilizing these dossiers, we're going to be quite clear that no industry member. Again, I don't think you would want us to share your dossier with another applicant. So we would limit it to NRAs, and it would be NRAs on the continent, and the faculty would be faculty from the continent and from other NRAs. The presentations, yes, we will share the presentations after this meeting. Okay, seems sound has been resolved. Okay, great. Let me just see if anything else has come through. No. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for your interest. And yeah, we hope that will get your support. All right. I'm now going to move to item 4. Christina, over to you, please.
Thanks, Tumi. Sorry, I'm not sure if I should put my camera on as well. I'm just worried about everybody's bandwidth, but let's try this for now. I think we have had some discussions previously around dormant products, and specifically that came about as a result of the renewals process that we were implementing. And we had found that some of the applications that we need to renew, because they were dormant, didn't meet the requirements as set out in the guideline. So I think that also sparked us and spurred us on to do a survey to understand how many of the products that's currently on our medicines registration database is actually not marketed. So I think, yeah, instead of maybe saying dormant, let's rather say not marketed. And we had found that from the survey, just engaging with industry colleagues, that was about 52%. So what we have done subsequent to this to ensure that we get all of the information for products both in the private sector as well as in the public sector and get a holistic view, we've engaged in a procurement process to contract technical assistance with an organization that will assist us to collect the relevant market information and also assist us with building a an analytical model to then ascertain for the products that we've got registered, how many of them are not currently marketed, how many of them are marketed, are they marketed in the private sector, public sector, or just in one sector, how many of them we export, and of course also just to understand how that sits in terms of the spread across the ATC classes. So we're hoping that we will be able to conclude this survey now by the end of May, and then also internally then discuss the results of the survey and possibly then start engagements with industry around a way forward for these applications that we have that's currently sitting in our registration pipeline or where applications have been lodged, just to understand what the plan would be for marketing those products, and if perhaps there is a view from some of the colleagues where previously something has been submitted, but perhaps, you know, market conditions have changed, and said company decides that they actually do not want to progress the review of the application, to allow an opportunity also for those to be withdrawn, or if the intention then is to still proceed with the registration, that we just get this clarification around what's in the current applications pipeline. But this is kind of where we are. So we're hoping that by the end of July, we can start some engagements and just reflecting on some of the results that we've seen, that we've internally been able to unpack with the different colleagues, and then also share that information with the rest of the industry players. Thanks. I don't know if there's any specific questions on that. Otherwise, I can pause there for now in terms of that update. Thanks. Sorry, I'm just trying to also have a look here. Right, so I've just got, at the moment, I'm still seeing old no sound questions or comments. I haven't seen anything else. Let me just make sure I refresh that. So doesn't look like there's any questions on this particular topic. To me then, thanks. I will pause here and perhaps then just pass on to Silverani.
Thanks, Christelna. I do see a question there. It's from Salma Ismail, who said, to whom was the survey sent to in pharmaceutical industry regarding non-marketed dormant products? So maybe if you would like to take that before I come in.
So thanks, Silver. I'm sorry I missed that question. Certainly. So what we did is from HPA side, we extracted all of the registered products from the medicine registration database per applicant, and had sent individual emails to all of those applicant companies, requesting them then to indicate which of those products are currently marketed and which are not marketed. And for the responses that we've got, and I think we received also about 88% of the people that we sent the lists out to responded back. And we were then able to quantify that 52% based on those responses. And to corroborate that, we then requested from IQVIA also the breakdown in terms of the products which they have sales or transactional records for in the public sector, as well as the private sector. And that actually came out as, I want to say, almost an exact correlation, but I think they came out as 51%, whereas we had 52%. So there and thereabouts, it wasn't such a significant discrepancy or difference. So we think that that information is actually right on the money. Thanks so much.
Well, thanks, Christelna. I see there's another post from Nicole Edelstein, who says, what is ultimately the intent once you have the results of the research?
Thanks, Silver. So I think I did indicate what we would want to do is then publish a request to industry to have a look at the applications pipeline, to perhaps also then understand and look at the current market conditions and ascertain whether or not those applications that may have been logged with SAHPRA for review, whether or not that is still something that the applicants intend to register, or if that is perhaps something that the applicant might want to withdraw. As I said, that basically is what we see as an outcome from there. I think the concern that we've previously raised in one of the industry engagements is that we currently seeing things such as, for one molecule, just as a silly example, on ibuprofen, we had already 23 generics registered in market, and we had in the registration pipeline, I think, another 11 applications. For metformin, for instance, we had 22 generics already in the market, and we then saw that there was another, I think it was 14 or 16 applications in the registration pipeline. So obviously, I think from our side, in order to use our resources rationally and ensure that we are able to also, I think, meet the demand in terms of new product registrations that come in, it gives us an opportunity then just to canvass with industry whether or not those particular applications. And I think more so really for generic products potentially, the applicant might still want to pursue registration, or perhaps if market conditions have shifted and changed, that the applicant might not necessarily want to register that they have an opportunity to withdraw. And as I said, this is really brought on with the implementation of the renewals guidelines, because we have those requirements for renewals registration. So, within 5 years after registering the product, there would be this requirement to submit X, Y, and Z to the regulator to ensure that we can renew registration. And I think therein lies the concern around quite a lot of effort being put into registering quite a lot of products. that actually are not marketed. And I think our concern is also to make sure that we are able to serve the industry and make sure that we are able to register all of the applications that do come in. But to do so, obviously, we're in a pragmatic way to ensure that we have access to medicines and that we've got the right products on the market at the right time for the right people to access. And one thing that we don't want to do is to use the scarce and the limited resources to perhaps register products that may not necessarily go to market and may not necessarily remain on the market. Is to, I think really just help us come up with a good and sound operational strategy where we can balance all of these various demands. But as I said, I mean, it's very, very difficult to speculate on exactly what the data will tell us and exactly in which direction it may guide us or point us to engage further and have further discussions. It would really be something that we would need to see at the end of the analysis what the different data models tell us, and then have the engagement hopefully then in July, and then we can explore a way forward together. Thanks.
So, Christelna, I don't
Thank
know
you.
if you've seen. Sorry, go ahead, CEO. I think there's 2 more questions.
Go ahead, Silverani. I was just scrolling through. Go with those ones that you've noted, and I'll see if there's anything else I pick up.
Okay, so Christelna, there's one from Elisma that says, do we have to let someone know if we did not get such a document? But I think it's now not applicable anymore. And I think the other one relates to the same. It says, who do we contact if the survey has not been received by the applicant?
Yeah, spot on, Silver. So yeah, I mean, I think we did that initial litmus test last year. So at this point, we've proceeded beyond that point, and we now have, as I said, appointed a analytics organization to actually collect all of the relevant market data for us, so that we make sure that we don't leave anything out. We don't not account for any products. And we are looking widely across the public sector, private sector, the export sector, so that we can account for all of the products and all of the transactions. So I don't think, this is something that would add value at this particular point in the exercise. Silver, sorry, I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm not seeing any of the questions. I don't know if there's anything else. Otherwise, I can pause.
I just don't know if maybe Silverani identified these earlier. There's, I see the one from Elisma. Then, did you see the one from Kumeshni?
Yeah,
who do we
that's the one.
contact? You did that one, okay?
So it's just Dale and the one above that.
Okay, so from Dale, it says, is there going to be a separate forum for biologicals? Dale, do you mean a working group for biologicals? So maybe if you could just clarify that. And then from Paul, does this mean that we'll be given a further extension for phase 2 renewals for dormant?
So let me maybe answer. I think the question relevant to me is just the one from Paul. So we have had some discussions, I think, with representatives from ITG. I think it was might have been at the end of February, if not early March. And based on some of the suggestions there, I have further engaged with the CRO around what we will do to accommodate, I think, the dormant products, and just some of the requests to allow for time for these dossiers to be brought up to date. And indeed, what the CRO has indicated is that we would be comfortable to extend for a further year, i.e. where the initial grace period was until December 2024, we will then extend that to December 2025. And the further adjustment that we are busy with in the update to the guideline is also to accommodate that information that is required will be for a period of 4 years, not 5 years, because yeah, I mean, obviously quite pragmatically, it wouldn't make sense to request 5 years full of data for a product that has been registered 5 years ago. So during that renewal review cycle, potentially that product might only have been launched during the course of that first year, and therefore 5 full years worth of data might not readily be available. So in fact, yes, 4 years makes sense. And these updates to the industry communication, as well as then the guideline, we will try and publish also by the end of May. Thanks.
Thank you. Just gonna see, Dale has commented. Let's see. Give me a second. Okay, yeah. So Dale is just checking, and I'm not sure who will respond to this, Silverani. Maybe it's you. Is there going to be a separate working group for biologicals, as it has a separate set of variation guidelines? So maybe Silverani can speak to that.
We currently included the biologicals with the registration and variations group. So if there are any queries, it should be raised in the same platform. This was discussed previously, and because it was such a small group, that it was more practical to have them combined than to have a separate working group. So it will be one combined working group, and there has always been representation of biologicals in that registration and variations working group. Thanks.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, Dale, if you have the view that that doesn't work, you can engage with Silverani and the team. But let's keep it like that, and maybe in your agenda, Silverani, just have a specific agenda item then for biologicals, so that you can tackle any biological specific matters. Okay. And then we'll take this as the last one, so we can then proceed. Because there isn't any other anyway. It says I have a complementary medicine, which is currently under research. Would like to know how to go about registering it with SAHPRA. Can I ask Kaiser if you could respond to that on the, oh, I see Silverani has responded. Yes, I was going to ask that if you could respond on the chat, because that's going to be quite a lengthy one and you do need access to the guidelines. So Silverani has responded. Great stuff. Thank you. I'm now going to ask that we move to Silverani, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to be talking to the ICH survey, and we have done basically a sensitization to industry of the survey that was going to be held. So I'll just maybe share a bit of slide on why the survey and what it entailed and where we are at the moment. So just a moment. So I hope you can see my slides. Okay,
Yes,
so I'm
we
just
can.
going to briefly go over the ICH membership requirements, and then we will talk to the ICH survey, which is what is one of the requirements of membership. So currently SAHPRA is an ICH observer, and it obviously requires to attend 3 consecutive ICH meetings in order to qualify to be a member. And then also to participate in at least 2 of the ICH working groups. And then we need to demonstrate implementation of the ICH Tier 1 guidelines. And these in particular are ICH Q1, the Q7, and the E6 guideline. And then, of course, we need to provide regular feedback on the agency progress with respect to implementation of the ICH guidelines. And then, of course, ICH trainings to support understanding and implementation of these guidelines. So Just to talk to the aspect of implementation of guidelines, as well as the survey that's assessing our implementation of the Tier 1 guidelines. So it's obviously the intent of ICH to have information. So the management committee for June would have information on elections and the support of observers to confirm membership eligibility criteria. So the outcome of the survey would obviously inform the ICH Management Committee on our eligibility, for instance, SAHPRA becoming an ICH member. And of course, to support ICH, to support training work and also inclusion of specific questions in the training. So this would also guide what is required and what the difficulties were specifically in implementing these guidelines. It's also done with the intent to advance ICH's mission for regulatory harmonization. And it provides the ICH members information or data for internal consideration. So I think industry is aware that ICH involves industry as well as regulators. So this information is what will be shared. So the survey was conducted by an independent SIRS, and it was launched in December 2023 and it closed in February 2024. The results of the individual authorities and internal reports are shared with the ICH member management committee and the assembly. And this will include the combined results, which closed off. The survey closed off in March. They did the analysis in April, and they would they share the information in May. So we have received the information actually yesterday, and of which we shared with the ICH Secretariat. And of course, they will then deliberate on the survey outcomes and finalize and report on these in June of 2024. So at the next ICH meeting, we would obviously get feedback, which is in the next month, on our progress with respect to implementation of the Tier 1 guidelines. And of course, it's the input of both the regulators. So we complete a survey, and a survey has been sent out to industry, establishing whether this regulator has implemented or is implementing to a certain extent these Tier 1 guidelines. So we would like to maybe extend our thanks to the industry for participating. We do realize the results are already in, which means that your inputs have been collated by the party doing the survey, and we will then await feedback, and we'll be able to update you following our June ICH meeting. So that's all from my side, Chair. I'll just look if there's any questions.
Let's see. I don't see any new ones. I'm not seeing questions in the chat. Remember, if you could just put your questions on the Q&A, and then at the end, we will then have an open session. So I'm not seeing any questions for you, Savarani.
Okay, thanks.
Great, thank you. Do you mind sharing the agenda, Mokona? We're going to move then to the next set of feedback, which will be, I'll just double check. Veterinary Medicines. Alice, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Madam CEO. I'm going to be very brief in my presentations. And okay, I'm sitting in the dark somehow. Not sure why, but anyway. So I'll start
Can you
off
put
with,
it? Can you put it on slideshow mode, please?
yes, I've been trying to do that. Oh, is that fine now?
Yes.
Okay. So I will first address the harmonization initiatives in the veterinary medicines arena. And I've combined point 5.2 and 5.3 because to me they look the same. And I'll start off with our Veterinary Medicines as Bona initiative, an initiative which was begun by Botswana, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Tanzania, and Zambia. We have of late incorporated Namibia. They started off as observers, but Malawi has fallen off the bus. So they will also, remain as observers. So the objective of the initiative, the objectives were to reduce timelines for registration of veterinary medicinal products through applications of reliance and risk-based approach in our review pathways, and also making sure that we harmonize by using the VICH guidelines. I will talk about that later. Also, to efficiently utilize available SADC regional resources, we realize we've limited resources in the region, and this work sharing would actually assist. To ensure the availability of safe, efficacious, and good quality veterinary medicines within the region, thus improving animal health and public health. We approached UK VMD, and they have been very kind to us, offered to facilitate training for us. And so far, we have received, a link to start training on bioequivalence and biowaivers, and we are due to start this month. As a region, we are going to do that together, and then this will be followed by a workshop, and several other topics will come during the rest of the year. Our joint assessments are underway. We've received, after sending out an expression of interest, we received 24 applications, and of those, we only accepted 7 applications, which we're today actually going to peer review in terms of technical screening. The next initiative is the VICH, which stands for the International Cooperation on Harmonization of Technical Requirements for Registration of Veterinary Medicinal Products. It is the counterpart for ICH in humans. The objectives are to harmonize technical requirements for veterinary products registration, to bring high quality, safe, and effective animal health products to the market while minimizing the use of test animals and the cost of product development. This initiative, the founder members are also Japan, EU, and US FDA. South Africa's involvement started in 2013 when we joined as an observer. MCC then represented both NDOH and DAF, and I've been attending the steering committee meetings since then. And one thing I also want to point out is we've taken our industry with. So in these meetings, our industry also, participates in the discussion. We have been participating in expert working groups like the bioequivalence biowaiver working group, the pharmacovigilance working group, and the one on stability, and the current, guideline on stability of medicated premixes. And we are also participating in the global dossier for veterinary products discussions. In 2023, in November, we are proud to say that we attained the VICH standing membership status after meeting very stringent requirements, especially participation in the working groups. And one thing which I also would like to share with you is that soon after our observer status in 2013, we started, our MCC recommended that we form a task team, which we call the Veterinary Products Policy Task Team, which included agriculture and various other stakeholders, including industry experts, to discuss the VICH guidelines, and we ended up adopting the majority of these guidelines. So we worked together as a front to see if we, agree or disagree or needed to add or change some of these guidelines. One highlight about VICH is that South Africa, it was the first observer country or state to host a VICH public conference. We did that in 2019 in Cape Town, and the theme was Unlocking Africa's Potential. It was very well attended by the African continent and actually planted a seed for them to participate in VICH projects. The next VICH conference will be in November 2024 at the IMA offices, and we are proud to say SAHPRA is participating as one of the moderators of especially the session on harmonization. Now, the last topic is on regulation of antimicrobials in South Africa. We are all aware that in South Africa, we have two regulators controlling the veterinary medicines and registering veterinary medicines. We have Act 36 of 1947 and Act 101 of 1965. However, following a global call for veterinary oversight of antibiotics, I think the point to note there is that number 11, which says that competent authorities should ensure that all the antimicrobial agents and veterinary medicinal products containing antimicrobial agents used in animals, including through feed and water, are prescribed by a veterinarian or other suitably trained person authorized to prescribe VMPs containing antimicrobial agents in accordance with the national legislation. So it is clear that we have a mandate and are tasked with enforcement of this. So as a regulator, we initiated discussions on this topic, bearing in mind that quite a number of antibiotics are being sold over the counter, especially those which have been registered by Act 36. So we looked at the problem statement, we presented the problem statement and the challenges faced by this to our SAHPRA board, and then we moved on to discuss this issue with Act 36, 1947, and we, we agreed that we had a challenge, and this created a lot of gaps in the way we regulate antibiotics in the country. And we think there should be a collaborative approach on the way forward. We went back to consult with our experts from the legal team and also from the vet committee and others. We were in consultation with the Ministerial Advisory Committee on AMR, and we are glad to say that they've supported the initiative to discuss this further. We've tabled the matter for discussion with the Minister of Health, and he has recommended a way forward that this matter, considering the challenges in terms of public and animal health, we need it should be discussed with the Minister of Agriculture. So we await this discussion, which is so far proposed to take place next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Let me see. We do have a few questions. And Douglas, if we can just check, Alex says that his Q&A seems to be problematic. So let's just check in the background there with him. And then there's a question, Alice, that says, do these mechanisms also include radiation emitting equipment for veterinarians? So I don't know if you'll take it or if Dimakatso will. That's from Nadia. And then Sarah says, please provide a brief update regarding vet medical devices and IVDs. So I think very similar. Yeah, so I don't know if you're going to speak to it or Dimakatso will, please.
I'll just explain the challenge and Dimakatso will take over. I think what we did many years ago was to also search and maybe discuss with some of the recognized regulatory authorities how they are regulating medical devices, especially in the veterinary medicines arena. And unfortunately, they weren't really regulating, but I've heard recently that they are trying to see how they can go about it. So far, I would like to say we have not come up with any guidance on this, you know, and especially in the veterinary medicines arena. But Dimakatso will add to that because she had a meeting. I knew there was the industry proposed to meet her at some stage. Thank you.
Thanks, Dimakatso. You can go ahead, please. So Dimakatso in the meeting. Dimakatso? You're not in the meeting. We'll just check with her in the background. And Mokona, will you do that? And then, yeah, because she's going next, unless if she's got connectivity issues. I thought I saw her earlier. We'll just check in the background what's going on with Dimakatso, and then she'll comment on that. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Let's see. So those are the two around medical devices. Okay. There's more. Alice, will industry also be invited to contribute to the AMR discussions? And then the second one is, please comment on the registration of veterinary complementary medicines, please.
Okay, the first one, obviously, we can't do this alone. In fact, in our roadmap, since these are still high-level discussions, once that is over, we will definitely engage all the stakeholders and industry being our main stakeholder. So we are taking a participatory approach. Thank you. And then the one, yeah, our veterinary medicine, complementary medicines are also mentioned under category D, and they will follow the same procedure which KESA is taking at the moment. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I don't see any other questions. Right, thank you. Okay, Kaza, maybe you can respond to also, you can reflect on that question when you then take over now to present on item 6.
Thanks, Chair. Just to add on what Alice has said, as we're not currently registering complementary medicine, but through the licensing process, we allow those products that are of herbal origin and intended for use in animals. And during the review process, yes, we do liaise with the vet unit for inputs before we can even send out recommendations to applicants or even finalize such applications. Can I now go to item 6, Chair?
Yes, please, you can proceed.
In terms of the update on regulations, the regulations are currently with the SAHPRA legal team, and they had their meeting, I know, last week, but the outcome of the meeting has not yet been communicated to the SAHPRA executive. So once the legal team have briefed the SAHPRA executive and provided a way forward, that's when we can even be sharing with members of industry what next. But at the moment, they are with legal, and legal will advise the executive in terms of what the outcome of their meetings was about. That's what I can say on the regulation, Chair.
Thank you. And just to add that as soon as we then complete this process, we will give further updates through the CAMS working group. Okay. There's some questions for you. So there's one question for now. It says, can a complementary manufacturing facility manufacture complementary medicines for human and veterinary? use?
If you look at the type of license that we are providing, they are specific to category D. And for those other manufacturers who hold other licenses, like for example, in the pharma, we have provided that because a facility can only hold one license, they come to the SAHPRA complementary portal to ask for attaching their category D products to their existing license. So if you already hold a license except for medical device, you can come to the SAHPRA portal and then we will consider appending your product list onto your existing license, because we can't issue one facility with more than one license. Thanks.
Thank you, that's clear. Yeah, I don't see any other questions. Okay, nothing for now. Thank you, Kaiser. So yeah, we'll come back with more feedback on this. All right. So now we're going to hand over to Dion.
Apologies, my computer was a bit slow there. Can you all see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So good morning, everybody. I'm going to be talking or giving updates on 4 topics. The first is substandard and falsified medicines. The second will be post-market surveillance testing. I'll give a brief update on cannabis and then an update on SAHPRA's border activities. So just in terms of substandard and falsified medicines, and SAHPRA did actually have a webinar on this, and I hope that most of you enjoyed it, but were able to enjoy it. But I'm just going to give a brief overview again about substandard and falsified medicines for those that could not attend. So what are substandard and falsified medicines? The WHO defines substandard as products that are out of specification, and these are authorized medical products that fail to meet either the quality standards or the specifications or both. And then compare that to falsified medicines or products that are deliberately or fraudulently, they misrepresent their identity, composition, or source. And then the other category that WHO has is unregistered or unlicensed medical products. And these are medical products that have not undergone evaluation or approval by the national or regional regulatory authority for the market in which they are marketed or distributed or used, or are subject to permitted conditions under the national or regional regulation and legislation. So in our pharmaceutical supply chain, these are the 3 types of products that we do not want to have, which is either substandard, falsified, or unregistered or licensed products. So there are mechanisms that we have in place to prevent, detect, and respond to substandard and falsified and unregistered medicines. The most important one, and this is where the industry comes in a lot, is the control of the legal supply chain. So from the holder of certificate of registration, the licensed manufacturer, to the wholesaler, to the pharmacy, there are guidelines on how you must be licensed, which standards you must comply to in order to maintain control of the product from the time that it's of its import or manufacture and release till the time that it gets dispensed. But also there are things that happen after that, like life cycle management, post-market surveillance, pharmacovigilance, as well as recalls and withdrawals or enforcement, which then controls the legal supply chain and ensures that the products, when they reach the patients, are not substandard, falsified, or unregistered medicines. Other mechanisms that we have to prevent, detect, and respond to SF medicines and unregistered medicines. Recently, SAHPRA implemented the presence at the ports of entry. This has allowed us to check whether the shipments that are coming in comply with SAHPRA's requirements before they are then released by the Border Management Agency. We also recently implemented post-market surveillance testing and the monitoring of advertising and promotion activities, especially with the internet, where people in South Africa are able to be offered products that are either substandard, falsified, or unregistered in the South African market. What SAHPRA also does is collaborate with a forum called the Pharmaceutical Crime Forum, and there we've got the organizations like the police and the Hawks and those sorts of things, where we are able to collaborate on any contraventions are related to the Medicines Act with regards to SF and unregistered medicines. SAHPRA also participates in regional groups as well as global groups, and we do a lot of collaboration around there and information sharing with regards to SF medicines. And one thing that we do that's very important is that we participate in the WHO member state mechanism on SF products. And on this level, the WHO has got a number of groups that look at various aspects to enhance the mechanisms that we have for the prevention, detection, and response to SF and unregistered medicines. Now, what can industry do to assist us with this and also make sure that we have got a tightly controlled supply chain is continue to adhere to the guidelines that control the legal supply chain. So from licensing to your GXP guidelines that you have, as well as your life cycle management and post-importation testing and those sorts of things, so that we ensure that when the pharmacies and the dispensing doctors and those that are authorized to dispense get those products, that those products are safe, they are efficacious, they're enough quality, so that they don't cause harm to the patient, but really perform their purpose. And if you are not aware, SAHPRA on its website under Contact Us has got a link where you can report detected, substandard, falsified, and unregistered medicines. And it's the picture on the right-hand side where you see complaints related to medicines and medical devices. That is where industry or anybody else that you know can report any detected, substandard, falsified, and unregistered medicines. Just going to touch a little bit on post-market surveillance testing. As I said, this is something that we've introduced quite recently over the last 2 years. Just wanted to explain to the industry, what is post-market surveillance and how do we actually do it? So post-market surveillance, how do we do it? We develop a risk-based plan. So it's not all products in the South African economy that we will go and sample and test. I mean, we've got a lot of products that are registered. So we really look at very specific categories such as public health need. We look at the particular product then, and then we also look at various facilities. So we put all of these into a program and it spits out a plan and it tells us for these particular products based on these risk factors, you need to go to this facility and you need to sample this particular product. And this is across the Republic, and the Republic is not small, it's quite big. So it tells us exactly where to go and pick up these products. So it includes facilities that are both private as well as public sector. And it includes all levels from the manufacturer importer to wholesale to dispensing level. So the implementation of this plan involves the sampling of the product. We then review the product for compliance to regulation. So we will look at the labeling, we will look at the PI, we will review the PI, we'll pick up the spelling mistakes and all of those things. And then we will test the product. And what this does, it provides a picture of the control of products and how we are preventing, how well we're preventing SF medicines in the legal supply chain. So where are we now at the moment? We are still sampling our 2023-2024 inspection plan. We had some delays there. So we're in the process of conducting that sampling, and we're also in the process of developing our 2024-2025 PMS plan. And what we are requesting is industry's collaboration with the sampling process and with this post-market surveillance, because it does contribute to us achieving our ML3 for medicines and maintaining our WHO ML3 status for vaccine manufacturing. So it's very important for the country that we implement this and we have success in implementing post-market surveillance. Just a small update on cannabis. I'm not sure if any of you have seen, but we have shared a schedule amendment, and we don't normally ask for comments on schedules, but because this affects the industry quite a lot, we've actually asked that our minister to send out the proposed Schedule 6 amendments for comments. And I just want to give a quick update on that. So just some history as to how we got to amending the schedules. We participated in a cannabis Pakisa action lab, and this was in the media. The presidency had put out a statement last year, and this was hosted by Dallard, who's the owner, the Minister of Agriculture, is the owner of the Cannabis Master Plan. And this was held from the 19th to the 23rd of June 2023. And we had attendees from various sectors, government, social partners, industry experts, faith-based organizations, as well as legal experts. And one of the actions that had to come out of that is that SAHPRA was required to amend the schedules in accordance with the decisions made at the Cannabis Pakisa. And in a nutshell, these amendments enable Dallard to regulate the cultivation of all cannabis and enable the limit for the THC, for low THC cannabis, to be determined by the Minister of Agriculture, but still enable SAHPRA to have oversight over cannabis cultivated for medicinal purposes only, and that includes the cultivation for the purposes of APIs. So I know this is a very busy slide, but it shows you what our current schedule says and what our proposed amendment says. Where you see an underline, it will be an addition, and where you see a bold bracket, it will be a deletion. So I'm going to read the proposed schedule amendments the way it is now being proposed. And it says that THC, or tetrahydrocannabinol, will be Schedule 6, except in raw cannabis plant material which is cultivated and possessed in accordance with a permit issued in terms of the Plant Improvement Act, and processed products manufactured from such material intended for agricultural or industrial purposes, including the manufacture of consumer items or products which have no pharmacological action or medicinal purpose. So what that does is it expands the exemption to include what we would normally have under the preambles from Schedule 0 to 4. So that if THC is included in the manufacture of consumer items which have no pharmacological or medicinal purposes, it would not be subject to Schedule 6. It also then allows the Minister of Agriculture, or the Department of Agriculture, to give a Plant Improvement Act permit for the cultivation of all cannabis, and there would therefore need to be particular standards that are applied to the manufacture of cannabis, or sorry, the cultivation of cannabis that is going to be going into medicines. What we took out from the schedules, or we propose to take out of the schedules, it's not yet published or gazetted, is that processed products made from cannabis containing 0.001% or less of THC, that is actually now going to be coming out. And what that's going to allow is that other product regulators, such as food, cosmetics, agricultural feeds, will be able to put in their regulations as to what is allowed in terms of their products. And then we kept the last exemption, which was raw material cultivated, possessed, and consumed by an adult for personal consumption, in line with the Prince 3 judgment from the Constitutional Court. Now, obviously, South Africa is still a signatory to the 1961 Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs. So the proposed amendments would therefore be subject to various contingencies, and these contingencies sit with the Minister of Health, the DG of Dallard, and the DG of the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. So one of the things that's going to assist this amendment is that Dallard must develop and implement a good agricultural practice standard that must be applicable to all holders of a permit to cultivate cannabis. So this is to ensure that the cannabis that comes out of the cultivation process will then be suitable for use in the manufacturing process for medicine. So manufacturing process will then include from cutting, drying, onwards, extracts, distillations, those sorts of things for medicines, that the cannabis made under GAP, certified by Dallard according to a standard that we are in agreement with as the medicines regulator, that cannabis will then be able to be used by people who are licensed as by SAHPRA as manufacturers to cut, dry, extract, etc. The Plant Improvement Act needs to designate the plant and provide appropriate limits for raw material cannabis plant to be considered low THC. So that limit will therefore be determined by the Minister of Agriculture, and therefore all cannabis that contains less than that limit will be appropriate for industrial purposes. one thing DALOT needs to do in order to prevent diversion is the permits that they issue must include appropriate measures to prevent the diversion and to designate how and to which channel such material would be distributed. So DALOT needs to come up with mechanisms and frameworks to ensure that when the licensed manufacturers take on that cannabis, that cannabis is fit for use in medicines. Because we, as I said, are a signatory to the INCB, the DALOT needs to report on the quantities that they find from their permit holders that are in excess of the limit for low THC. So that is something that they need to work on. In order for this all to be legal, the Cannabis for Private Purposes Bill needed to be approved, and that's made quite good progress. And the reason for that is that the passage of the Cannabis for Private Purposes Bill will enable the removal of the mention of cannabis in the schedules to the Drugs and Drugs Trafficking Act, which was a legal hurdle last year. And as I said, the Department of Health, in terms of foodstuffs, cosmetics, and the Disinfectants Act, needs to provide regulations as to what can go into food, what are the limits for cannabis and THC and CBD in foodstuffs. And similarly for the animals, DALOT needs to provide regulations in terms of the Fertilizers, Farms, Feed, Agricultural Remedies and Stock Remedies Act to determine what cannabis-derived products for animal ingestion will be allowed, but keeping in mind that for food and for the agricultural feeds, it must not be for medicinal purposes. As soon as that product is for medicinal purposes, it will be subject to SAHPRA. So the comments, the proposed amendments went out for comment in the 15th of January 2024 for a period of 2 months. The comment period ended. We received those comments and they are still under review by SAHPRA. But this is all being coordinated by the Department of Agriculture. All the departments are sitting together to make sure that there's a smooth transition with regards to the contingencies required by the amendment of SAHPRA's schedules. My last topic is just an update on SAHPRA border activities. In previous ITG meetings, there were concerns about the number of shipments that were escalated and delayed because of non-compliances. And I've just given an update on the numbers that we are experiencing at the ports. Just to give the industry an idea, we used to sit at about 4% of shipments being escalated. That number, and this is the yearly stats that I'm showing you right now, we've actually managed to bring that down to 1.5% of total shipments being escalated. And what I mean by escalated is that shipment, there was a requirement for that shipment to be escalated to or referred to a technical evaluation unit for further evaluation, such as the medical devices unit or the complementary medicines unit. All those shipments did not comply with SAHPRA's requirements, and we had to stop that shipment from coming in. So just to give the industry an idea, these are the number of shipments that we're dealing with, but the percentage that we actually are escalating had actually dropped over time. The one thing that you will notice is that OR Tambo has got the largest number of shipments, and we've recently just implemented an additional resource there. So we now have 2 border technicians sitting at OR Tambo to handle that volume. Now, the recent challenges that we had at OR Tambo, I just want to give the industry an update on that. We had a temporary change from physical stamping to electronic review of shipping documents, and SAHPRA provided a communication or issued a communication with regards to this on the 10th of May last week, Friday. The reason for this is that there was no office for the border technicians at the new agents building, so they couldn't work there. We had to then make a plan and move them over to electronic submission. But electronic submission was not the fastest way in order to do this. We picked up lots of challenges, and therefore there was a backlog that was developing. I'm happy to announce that as of this morning, we issued a communication this morning. If you have not received it, please do go onto our website under Communications to Industries. SAHPRA will be resuming the physical stamping of shipments. However, we are asking to control the volumes because there were quite a number of shipments that were delayed because of this particular issue. We're asking industry and its partners, such as the freight forwarders, to please adhere to the resubmission plan that is on the communication. This is in order to control volumes and also to allow us to process new shipments that are coming in so that we don't create a new backlog. So please, if you have not seen that communication, please go onto SAHPRA's website under communications to industry. I believe our communications people have also sent out the communication out to the industry. Please do look at those resubmission dates and ask your importing partners to please adhere to that so that we can control these volumes and bring the backlog down by next Wednesday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dion. I'm sure you're going to have lots of questions. And thank you to industry really for their patience during the last few weeks where we had these challenges at the OR Tambo port. Okay, I'm going to go through the questions for you. It's quite a few. There's some that are related to Kaiser, but we'll come back to those. Okay, there's a few for Kaiser. I'll come to those. Let's just do Dion's one. So there's a comment from Sudesh who says, this is a general comment. The inaugural meeting is great and I applaud SAHPRA for this initiative. Please may this forum continue. Yes, it will continue on a quarterly basis. Okay. Then there's another question for CAMS. I'll come to CAMS. Dion, maybe, yeah, you can speak to this and Christina can maybe assist. How is SAHPRA intending to deal with increased illicit sales of codeine-containing substances beyond sting operations in conjunction with the HOCs and SAPs? Do you want to speak to that? Or should I read out a few questions for you? Let's do that in the interest of time. Then there's another CAMS one, which I'll come to. Then the next one for you, Dion, from Gerhard. Suggestion to make reporting of suspected falsified or illegal traded products by the public via social platforms, photos and text detailed directly to SAHPRA if possible, not via website only. Maybe a chatbot with prompt questions. Maybe you can talk to that and also maybe make reference to our whistleblowing platform. Then there's, yeah, let's take those two, then we'll come to the other two. There's two more.
Thank you, Dr. Tumi. So yes, we've got, with regards to SAHPRA intending to deal with illicit sales of codeine-containing substances. So the immediate, and it's mentioned there, beyond sting operations conducted with HOCs and SAPC. So the immediate thing is that we are responding quicker to those sorts of reports, trying to, investigate those ones. But the more long-term approach is this project that we've got going at the moment called the Codeine Care Initiative. And it's a multi-pronged approach, and it's got various stakeholders within it and various professional associations. So we're looking at longer-term plans on how to deal with the codeine-containing substances and the illegal selling of those. So the one thing that we're looking at is how to, within our current legislative framework, allow reporting of the sale from manufacturer, from wholesale level, and then in later phases looking at dispensing level, so that we can reconcile the information to see where are we getting diversion of product, where is this product going to, who's it being sold to, how is it getting into the wrong hand outside of the legal supply chain. The other thing that we are looking at is education and awareness, and that's another aspect of the Codeine Care Initiative. And then, Christina, there's a third one I forgot now. Sorry, can you help me?
So, yeah, Dion, I'm also trying to run through my mind. So, I mean, I hope I'm not repeating anything that you just said, but yeah, indeed, I think the first thing is, as you said, multi-pronged approach in terms of also involving different stakeholders, because it is, I think, a holistic approach to this is not just about finding who's selling the products illicitly, but also to assist and work with entities such as civil society in terms of raising awareness, as Dion says, and then creating a training environment for our healthcare professionals to ensure that we also have rational use of codeine-containing products and raise awareness, especially with the youth. So civil society with the connections there with Department of Basic Education, how we then manage to get those campaigns on the go to ensure that we also start addressing that from a substance abuse perspective. But it is, I think then, as Dion says, just the IT component around how that reporting.
Christina, can I ask that you just chair for a few minutes? I just have an urgent call that I have to take.
Apologies, I hope you guys can hear me. Hello?
Can you hear me? I was asking if you can just quickly, if you can chair and facilitate the questions for about 2 minutes. I just have to take this call.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes, 100%, Doc. Apologies. So I seem to have lost connectivity there for a second. Just to try and recap. So on the IT side, to ensure that we've got coherent reporting systems and an analytic model that will help us identify anomalies in terms of the amount of product that is then, from a manufacturing perspective, sent down the supply chain through to distributors, where those volumes from a distributor level then go into wholesale, from wholesale then into pharmacy. And specifically to the point that was raised by the colleague in the Q&A, it is then much easier for us to identify these anomalous sales volumes to that last point of sale, or potentially from distributor to wholesaler, where the reconciliation of the movement of those products don't add up, if you will. So from there, our inspector team can then, based on exception, then target the investigation so that we've got really good use of the resources that's available. So it is very much around making sure that we've got the legislative framework, as Dion says, that we've got the reporting components, the analytics components to then identify anomalies, act rapidly and swiftly, and then also work with our other partners, such as the Pharmacy Council, as we're also connecting and hopefully are able to pull in Health Professionals Council, Nursing Council, but already have got the support and the backing of the National Drug Authority, as well as then the members of civil society, to ensure that we raise adequate awareness and we really have a much larger support for this initiative and what the initiative intends to deliver on. Thanks. Dion, let me then, I think, just jump. Hopefully we've answered that question. I think
I'm back,
I wonder.
Christina.
Okay, certainly.
Happy to take over. Thanks for being on standby. Yeah, you've got a lot of questions, Dion. I'm going to ask all of them because we're going to run out of time. The next one is on the semaglutide matter. The question is that this matter shows that there's disharmony within SAHPRA on dealing with such products, specifically these APIs. Is there a guideline draft speaking on regulation of API importation? And then the next one is around counterfeit. The question is there no exception given to applicants for an expedited review process for registration for products who have been brought in as falsified and counterfeit into SA? It's a bit of a long one. It says the applicant came to know that their product is circulating as counterfeit in SA and decided to register, but registration is taking long. So is there no way that we can expedite these? Then the next one is around the strike that, yes, we're also aware of Port Health officials at OR Tambo. Has this been resolved? Maybe Christina can also speak to that. Then the next one is, do the new OR Tambo border requirements apply for complementary medicines as well? And then the next one is, how is this week's border detainment official strike impacting? So very similar to that. And let's just see. And then the last one from Mohammed, it says, will AXA reverse storage charges at OR Tambo, as this was as a result of relocation of SAHPRA offices and it had nothing to do with industry. So if between the two of you, you can tackle these, and then I'll take the CAMS ones.
Okay, thanks. I've just responded on the semaglutide saga one. And the answer is yes. SAHPRA has recently posted a guideline on licensing and distributing of scheduled substances. Last year, sometime we actually had licensed two importers and importer wholesalers of scheduled substances, and there are more in the pipeline. And this will help us to ensure that when people import scheduled substances, especially for the purposes of API, that it's brought in under a SAHPRA license in line with Section 22C1B. Okay, I noted Gerard's idea, and I've answered him that we will take that on board and discuss with our comms colleagues. With regards to the expedited review process of registration, so SAHPRA does have a priority review guideline, and if your product meets the criteria of priority review, it will be approved for priority review based on your motivation for public health need purposes. Okay, to answer Paul's question, we were notified of a strike by Port Health colleagues at OR Tambo this morning. The BMA, as far as I know, has not issued a formal communication around this particular strike. So the BMA works very closely with SAHPRA, but we're not part of SAHPRA, so we actually don't know what resolutions they have regarding the strike of the BMA officials at OR Tambo. In terms of the new border requirements apply for CAMS as well. Yes, so CAMS is a medicine and it needs to comply with CAMS requirements. So what the border technicians do is when the medicines come in, they check, does it comply with CAMS requirements before it is released. Sarah, I think I've answered your question in terms of the border detainment officials strike. There's been no formal communication from the BMA regarding how that will be resolved. And then Mohammed, in terms of the reversal of storage requirements from AXA, I think that question will have to be directed to AXA, whether they will reverse the storage requirement, the charges at OR Tambo. Dr. Tumi.
Thank you, Dion. In the interest of time, I'm just asked that we go back to CAMS. Kaiser, you still with us? There's quite a few. You may have seen them already and maybe even responded. I'm just scrolling down to those. There were quite a few at the bottom here. Okay, so the first.
There was a question. Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Kaiser.
I've just seen some, and then I've put in some of the comments in there. The first one that I saw there was still relating to the vet manufacturing facility being able to also deal with CAMS product, and the answer to that is yes. But in reviewing the products, we will always be seeking guidance and opinion from the vet division as well as the VCC. I think there was another one that dealt with certificate of resale.
I think you responded. Do you want to speak to that?
Yes, there was a question on the turnaround time for processing of certificate of resale, which in terms of the stakeholder notice that we shared, is 15 working days. Yes, there will be those that may have got outside the 15 working days, depending on whatever circumstances or information that needed to be shared. But also there is one question that talks about the frustrations in getting the certificate of resale. I requested that a member or an applicant who's experiencing such contact me directly, because as I'm talking now, I've checked the record. All the certificate of resale that have been in the system have been processed and signed accordingly. So if they haven't received, please contact me. But I'm not talking about those that came this week because they are still under review. Those that came from last week and backwards, if any applicant hasn't received a copy of that, please do contact me, and then I will liaise with the team to do that. There was a question, I don't remember the others. Maybe if
I
I've
think you
left
responded
others,
to most on the Q&A, so I think I'm happy with that. In the interest of time, I hadn't seen your response. Apologies. Is there any other one you want to speak to, or you're comfortable with what you've put in your responses?
there was one on specific guidelines for chems manufacturers, if I'm correct. And in response
Yes,
to
and I
that,
think you
because
responded to
I
it.
wasn't sure what specific guidelines for chems manufacturers was about, but the roadmap that we have currently and the one that we are working on does provide for guidance in terms of the GMP for manufacturers.
Great, thank you. So if Anonymous can just provide more clarity there, but Kaiser has spoken to that. Great, thank you, Kaiser. Great, thank you. There's one more comment, let me see. Geeta, on the variations, the status of variations and the timelines, do you mind if we just hold those? I'm trying to think where we squeeze it. Okay, maybe we tackle it now. Are you talking about both clinical and quality variations? Maybe also just clarify in the chat. But Silverani, is there something you can talk to? An update on new applications and variation status in terms of timelines, currently not on the agenda. Yeah, and I'm assuming these are tackled at a working group, right?
Yes.
So that's why we didn't
Yes, it's
raise it here. So Silverani, is that a correct understanding from my side?
Yes, you're correct, CEO. These are being addressed in the working group discussion. So the registration and variation working group is where we discuss this.
Okay.
And of course, I'm sure with Christelna giving an update later on the DB, it has also impacted a little bit on our processing of applications over that period of time. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Right, I'm gonna ask that we proceed. Okay, the next one. Let's see, Dimakatso had a technical issue. Do we have her now? Dimakatso, are you on board now?
Yes, I'm using Mokona's computer. Yeah, CEO.
Okay, great. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Mokona is not here to display the agenda, but I think the first topic is related to that. I am requested to give feedback, and good afternoon, good morning to everyone. It's medical device regulation. So I'll just share an update regarding where we are at with the medical device regulation. I think maybe let me just not make an assumption. The medical device regulation went out for the second round of public comment. The first one went out in 2021, and then the second round went out last year in 2023. And then we received the comments from the public on the second round in end of November 2023. 3, and then all the comments we received from the National Department of Health this year, end of February 2024. What we did, we have collated all the information, and we have received about 22 responses from different associations, different organizations, individuals as well, who have responded. And we have collated all the information that we have received, put them according to different regulation numbers. And at the current moment, the team is reviewing all the responses and updating them. Once we finish with the review internally within the team, we will then share the responses with our committees, the Medical Device Committee and Legal. And then based on the outcome of the discussion with the committees, then we will share with our executive, we'll update and share with our executive committees. And then the intention is to publish before end of 2024. I just want to note it's not delay, but a little bit of a slow approach to this is because the team that is working on the regulation is the same team that we're also focusing on the feasibility study for medical device. So they are sharing their time between their feasibility study as well as the medical device regulation. But as indicated, the intention is to have the version 2 of the medical device regulation finalized and published by end of this year. So that is the update on the regulation. The next update requested to bring forward is in regard to medical device product registration roadmap. I'll also give a little bit of background regarding that, and then where we are at and what is happening at the current moment, as well as the way forward. So if you, and unfortunately, as I'm using Mukona's computer, I can just capture what I have said in 1 or 2 slides, and I'll share that with our communication colleagues so that it can be also posted. But what happened is I just want to make sure the correct naming is used regarding product registration. Sometime we have started doing engagement with industry using various platforms indicating that, we intend to do a pilot for medical device product registration sometime last year. But upon engagement with our legal committee, and that is what I want us to all understand, that we are not doing a pilot, we are doing a feasibility study, because there's a huge legal implication for calling the feasibility study a pilot. So I just want to indicate that we are embarking on a feasibility study. So, but prior to where we are at now, as SAHPRA, we have engaged various stakeholders, various organ of the state departments to assist us, in understanding the proposed way forward. For example, we have engaged with SABS, the Department of Trade and Industry, engaged NCRS, NHLS, Africa CDC, our NICD, etc., in assisting us with, information towards developing of the expression of interest for the feasibility study towards product registration for medical device and IVD. So we have published a draft feasibility study. I'll speak to that in March of this year. So the feasibility study is, we're mainly looking at, the registration approach that we will use as an entity, as a regulator towards product registration for medical devices and IVD. So we're looking, for example, at the reliance model mainly, as well as the use of conformity assessment bodies towards product registration. Noting that one other reason of us doing a feasibility study is that product registration in our country is new. So obviously it's new to us as a regulator as well. So the feasibility study is also a voluntary process. And we have published the draft some time ago, so if colleagues can go into our website and have a look at it. But prior to us publishing the feasibility study, we did engage as well, like for example with SANAS, as I indicated. we had a workshop with the conformity assessment body to support us in the study. And an update on that is that we do have 3 conformity assessment body, both local and international, who are interested in embarking on the feasibility study with SAHPRA, which is quite good news for us, and also supporting with training for both SAHPRA as well as to our colleagues in SANAS. And then after that meeting, we had between March and April, we also had a meeting with the industry at large, speaking to the feasibility study. What is the intention of the regulator regarding the feasibility study? And what the outcome of the meeting was that we're going to have one-on-one meeting with the organizations that are interested in being part of the voluntary feasibility study. So far, we have already engaged, or we are about to engage 7 organizations that has shown interest in participating in the study. So during our workshop, we have indicated that when we publish the workshop, we have also attached the expression of interest for the feasibility study. And the intention of that was to also sensitize the industry into understanding what we are embarking on. The product of interest, which is mainly HIV and TB product, also involving radiation control in the feasibility study as well. So we will also like to see how to operationalize receiving a product that is radioactive, as well as the product that is a device. So this is one of the objectives of us doing the feasibility study. So as I've indicated, since the last meeting or the workshop we have 7 interested organizations that we are meeting with, engaging with towards, explaining further. We are engaging them, for further questioning on what is the way forward. And we intend to publish the expression of interest now, the final one, by end of May, and it will be open for a period of a month. Whereby more organizations can apply, and we will also engage with them. So the published expression of interest will be accompanied by how do you apply and how to engage with us for further clarity, as well as we will also publish the relevant guidelines to assist with submission of the technical dossier, for example, for reliance from the countries that we rely on, that we have indicated in expression of interest, how to apply to, or how to send your application to the regulator, or if you're a local manufacturer or a company that outside of the country that we are not using reliance, how to apply. What is of interest from the organization that we have met, there's also local companies, and which is quite good, because then it will assist us as well in engaging on the conformity assessment body to support local organization. As I indicated, this is a voluntary study that will be open for a month. And once we receive the applications, so this is way forward, I'm speaking feed forward on what we will do. We'll do a direct contact with all the volunteers, the conformity assessment body, as well as the applicant that will be submitting the documents for product registration purpose. And then I think what I also need to update is one of the output of the feasibility study will be the updated document. So the documents guidelines, the guidelines that we will publish now, we will indicate as in the expression of interest already that these are working guideline. As we go along through the process, we will update the guideline, and then we will publish the guideline as well to the public for public comment before we finalize. So we didn't want to publish the guideline for public comments until we went through the process, because we were just want to fine tweak it if it's necessary, and then we will publish it. Furthermore, some of the outcomes of the process will be, updating our process flow, finalizing our SOP, and at the end we will, working together with the conformity assessment body as well as the volunteers, all the volunteers, we will publish a high-level summary report, on the lessons learned, and also speaking to way forward regarding medical device and IVDs product registration. And we are also, while we are doing all this process on the feasibility study, at the background, we'll also be looking at finalizing the medical device regulation, as I have spoken to that. We'll also be looking at the medical device product registration fees, during this process, so that that can also be finalized and be published, so that based on the outcome of the feasibility study, we'll be looking at formal product registration collab, also, and or looking at a pilot. So based on, I just want to reemphasize this. So based on the outcome of the feasibility study, we will have to look at the information that we would have captured, the data that we would have captured during the process, and a decision can be made from executive level whether we go directly with the product registration, and then we will then publish a product collab, as well as looking at the pilot or a pilot. And I just want to emphasize that the feasibility study is focusing on human medical device and IVD. We didn't include veterinary medicine, and unfortunately I missed a bit because I kept being kicked out of the meeting earlier when my colleague Dr. Alice was presenting regarding medical devices and IVD for veterinary medicine, products. So we, with the expression of interest, we are not including veterinary products at this moment. We are only focusing on medical devices that are used for human use. And I think that can lead me to, I hope I've captured the question, but it can be clarified to me regarding the regulation of veterinary medical devices and including IVDs. At the current moment, all the organizations that distributing, selling IVD medical devices and non-IVD medical devices are required to have a medical device establishment license as per Section 22C of the Act. And some of the questions that I'm aware that we have been receiving is mostly on the GMDN code, and we have responded indicating that they can, the applicant can indicate that this is for veterinary medicine, and then there will not be any GMDN code. And I think the other question that I had was that how will we regulate the medical device? We are looking at mainly international approach towards medical device. We're looking at the US FDA as well as EMA on how they are regulating medical device, and we will communicate. But at the moment, even when we start doing product registration and doing a collab, we'll start with human medicine, and we'll clearly indicate on our product collab as to when will we include the medical device for veterinary. And all that said, we'll also make sure that we communicate the process through also understanding that this will also be new to the medical device veterinary industry. So we'll have to make sure that communication and engagement is also as often as possible to ensure that, the industry, veterinary, especially veterinary applicant, are aware of what's coming. But at the current moment, the focus is on human medical devices, including IVDs. So this is the update on both the roadmap, and I'm not too sure if I've captured the questions for veterinary medical devices. So I think for that, at the current moment, as I indicated, all organizations are required to have a license, and their product will be listed as part of the license application, and then we'll be aware of which products are managed by which organization. And organizations are therefore as well encouraged to report any post-marketing related adverse events or also field safety corrective action. Thank you, CEO. I think those are the update for the medical device. Can I continue to the Redcon, or should I wait a bit, CEO? Okay. I will proceed then. The other point that is placed on the agenda is speaking to the guidelines for incident management for radiation control. So I just want to highlight to the colleagues of the industry to please support us in reporting any incident that they might be aware of regarding the radiation sources, radioactive material, to assist us with the investigation. We are currently, we have written a guideline that we will publish. It's currently with our radiation control committee. Once they have reviewed it and it will go to our policy committee, it will be published. So we are encouraging the industry to please support us on reviewing the comments, and then upon that we'll publish the incident management. At the current moment, SAHPRA has various platforms on our system to report or any complaints to us, or can directly share their any incidents directly to the medical devices unit and radiation control. The details are on our website. When we discussed the incident management as one of the other things that will be reflected or be seen on our a guideline that will be published, will be speaking to how will SAHPRA publish any incident that we have, not also forgetting that we would like to encourage organizations to to report. So the intention of the publication is not to discourage, but also to encourage organizations to report on such incident as they are very serious incident that are affecting our environment and the users, all the users, and just general public. Thank you, CEO. That will be all from my side.
Thank you very much, Dimakatso. I'm going to go through the questions. I'm sure there's going to be a lot. Yeah, there's quite a few. I'm going to read through, say, 4 at a time, because there is quite a lot of questions. Apologies, I'm just scrolling through when I open them. So there's a question that is there procedure for NGOs to register with SAHPRA to facilitate humanitarian aid shipments? In this case, Alex, if you're referring to donations, we do have a donation guideline on our website, and so they would need to comply with that. And in this case, they may then have to engage with the Ministry of Health. So please have a look at our donations guideline on the website. And then a question on who's part of the various working groups. Again, each working group has terms of reference. In terms of industry determines who participates from that, so SAHPRA doesn't do so. But from SAHPRA side, it would be the senior managers and the respective managers. So you would then have to work with your associations there to determine who joins from industry. Then the next question, what is the process? What is the process should I wish to be considered to apply to be part of a certain working group? Again, as industry, you will make this determination. We cannot, as SAHPRA. So I would recommend, Teresa, that you speak to your relevant industry association. And then there's a question, getting quite a lot on. I'll come back. Kaiser, will you respond to this question from Anonymous on complementary medicine manufacturing? Just again, in the interest of time.
What is the question about, Chair?
You can see it. You'll see it came 17 minutes ago from Anonymous. It says, so if you can respond to it in the chat, in the Q&A, that would be great.
Okay, I'll go.
Yes, please. Yeah, 17 minutes ago. And then Alex, are we able to access a list of approved products and devices? Yes, that's available on our website. And I think, yeah, can you comment on that? The ones with comments, I'm going to not read them out, please. Can you commented on the question around the ISO 13485? So I'm not going to read through that. And then there's a question From Tanya, it says, please can the process for how one can join various working groups be considered and published? As I said, it can't be what SAHPRA determines in terms of who joins the working groups, who's not. What we can do is publish which working groups we have. And then industry will then need to reach out to those respective associations. But we unfortunately can't determine and should not be determining who participates from industry. But we can publish which working groups are in place. Dimakatso, okay, there's a response to that question, which Kanye responded to from Anonymous about the feasibility study. Great. Then from Nondumiso, I don't see a response. I think it's linked to an earlier question about the ISO certification. So I don't know if it needs a different response. Dimakato, it says, please comment on ISO certification of medical device products. Products already certified at a country of origin with regards to local distributors. Is reliance not applicable in that case? If you could address that, let me read a few more for you. Where can we submit questions, topics for working groups? Again, I've spoken to that one. On the feasibility study, good morning. Thank you for the update for the feasibility study for medical devices. Why not broaden the scope to include Class D medical devices like heart valves, pacemakers, etc.? This would provide you with more appropriate feedback from a larger scope of multinats. So Dimakatsu, you can speak to that. And then the next one, I'm going to give you one more, Dimakatsu. This one is for clinical trials. The question says, as there's no clinical trial section that I can see, and this relates to medical devices, can we please have clarity regarding the recent request for all Section 21 approvals for all consumables to be used in a clinical trial? I'm not aware of that. And Dosang is not here. Yeah, we'll note this question and have Dosang and Shamli look at that, and they'll come back to you. And then last one for you, another one for you, Dimakatsu, but I see Kanye has responded, so I'm going to skip through that. Then there's another one that Ditole responded to, so I'm going to skip through that. We still have a few matters. Then Dimakatsu, a third one, and then you can respond is, please advise when the updated MD IVD vigilance documents will be published. Comments were due by 20th of February, 2024. Okay. Do you want to address those three? I hope you noted them.
Yes, thank you very much, CEO, and thanks for the comments and questions and support of the colleagues at the back. So the questions, one of the questions that was brought forward to me was related to product registration, which already have ISO 13485. So when we're going to publish for the feasibility study under the table of content or the product technical dossier, one of the requirements will be product certification indicating that it's ISO 13485. This is a product. We need to be clear on that. That's product. So when you're looking at the TOC, you'll see that is one of the requirements. And I want to relate that to Reliance. We have a list of organizations that we have already identified as National Regulatory Authority that we rely on. At the current moment, we have 6, which is our US FDA, your Health Canada, your TGA, your Brazilian Visa. We have Europe, and as well as Japan, as well as WHO PQ. So if your product has received any approval or market authorization in any of the 6 countries, as well as the US, as well as the WHO, then it will follow the Reliance. But if it's not part of these organizations that I have mentioned, then the product has to be ISO 13485 because it also needs to comply to the essential principles. And then as you submit, you'll submit the table of content that will be published. So if you look forward, please check the expression of interest that will be published together with the documents. It will indicate the certificate, product certificate as one of the requirements. The second question was on the feasibility study. as to why we are not broadening it to other scope. I think this is based on, at some point we need to be able to finish the study, because if we keep on increasing the number of products, we will not be able to finish, because we want to take the lessons that we have learned from the process and implement it towards the pilot and product registration. And I take point that the colleague has raised that it will broaden up our scope. We will look at how many applications we will receive at this current moment for the HIV, and I think maybe let me explain the rationale for choosing HIV as well as TB. We actually went to NICD, we went to NHLS, as well as the Africa CDC to assist us with the priority diseases, so that we don't just thumb suck it. And those are the diseases that they put it on their list as the highest, and that's the decision that we took. But once we have published the expression of interest, and based on the amount of responses that we have received, we can extend it to other Class D product, because the product that we are doing is Class C and D that we have selected. So that does not stop us from doing that, but that will be communicated based on the number of applications that we received. But we want to contain the number of product that we are receiving so that we are able to finish the study. The one on the section 21 regarding why do we have to also do section 21 for the product, Kanye will respond to that. And the one on vigilance, I didn't say anything on vigilance because I saw it's on our on the agenda under the CROs, but I can give an update now. As indicated, the closing date for vigilance was in end of February, and once we received all the comments, unfortunately we lost the technical officers that were dedicated to focus on updating the guideline. But unfortunately we have a new technical officer who started yesterday that will now go back and focus on it. But let me just indicate the update that I wanted to share. We have received the comments exactly on the end of February. We packed it based on the, we lost the resources, so that we can also focus on product license applications and amendment. But then, as I indicated, fortunately, the person has started yesterday on the 15th of this month, and then they will focus on collating all the comments. To date, we have received 6 comments. 4 of the comments are coming from the association, so it's a little bigger because it's different association and comments into that. We also received comments from one of our African regulator, TMDA, Tanzania, and then an individual person. So moving forward with the person that have started, they will assist us in now circulating the comments, collating the comments and circulating to support for responses. And then we'll take it to our medical device committee for review, and then our policy committee as well. And then we'll publish with the intention to publish by FY. So I'm looking at the SAHPRA FY financial year will be Q2, end of Q2. So this point was indicated to be discussed under point 10, but yeah, that's why I didn't mention it earlier, CEO. And Sarah, I think, is the one who asked the question. Thank you. Over to you, CEO.
Thank you, Demakatsu. In the interest of time, because we need to finish at 12, can I ask that we tackle the questions via the Q&A, those that have been asked, and then move to the next item, because we do also want to allow for a few minutes at the end for any other questions, okay? So if the team can do that, please. All right, we're going to move then to the feedback on the guidelines. Jose and a few others will comment. Who's going to take the borderline? And to industry colleagues, apologies, Portia has traveled on work, so she's not available today.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I will be covering from the agenda item 10, section 10.1 to 10.3. On the borderline guideline, So since Captains of Industry, where we did communicate that the borderline guideline was now sitting with legal committee, I just wanted to give feedback that the borderline guideline has gone back twice to the legal committee because of the substantive comments that were made. In the last meeting that was held now on the 10th of May, it's been decided that the borderline guideline should go back to the Complementary Medicine Committee and the Diagnostic Medicine Committee. And once that is back, it's also been communicated the urgency to get this guideline really out to publication and implementation so that industry can get hold of it. So with the urgency placed on it, in this week, we've given the Complementary Medicine Committee and the Medical Device Committee, and then it's going to go back to legal, of which we will then finalize it. The comments are really substantive, and we are trying on it, but it has to be done right. So unfortunately, we're pushing it as we're expediting it as professionally as we can. On the co-applicancy guideline as well has gone back to the legal committee again with the comments that were made. So as well, it had a sitting on the 10th of May, and it's been given for feedback for the working group. We've been given them a deadline of 2 weeks. We would have liked for all 3 to be completed before the RTF, but again, we can't cut corners. On the Reliance guideline, yay, light into the tunnel. We've completed the Reliance guideline, and the Reliance guideline has been published. Just to give a bit of feedback, with the Reliance guideline, we had a Reliance workshop with industry, I think in December, and then we received your last comments in January. All comments were looked at, all comments were addressed, implemented. The guideline has been published. However, we're just doing our own internal signing off for it to be accessed onto the website. So although published internally, you're unable to view it on the website yet, but shortly you should be able to see it on the website, and communications will give a comms that it's actually on the website. Thank you, Chair. That's my feedback.
Okay, please
And
look
then,
out for questions.
Yeah, I was going to say I will address all questions on the chat. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right. Dimakatsu has already touched then on the adverse events guideline, and then on the BEE policy. So yes, we did receive feedback from industry. Based on the feedback, we had to consult a few stakeholders, which we have now consulted. One of them being the NGOH, and also going back to the BE Commission and the DTIC. So those engagements have taken place. And then based on those engagements, we then went back to our legal committee and provided input from there, and they're now looking at it. So the next step with this one is that we will be having a workshop with industry, wherein we will go through what the comments were and what our responses are to those comments. So we will publish it in the next coming weeks or so, when it is that we will be having this this workshop, as we now have done the required consultations. So do be on a lookout for an invitation to a workshop. Again, it will be virtual in this format so that we can accommodate a range of people, and we'll take you through then our responses. Okay, let me see if there's any question on this one. Okay. And Khalesia, please do respond to the questions on the Q&A. All right, then I'm going to hand over to Kristalna to tackle item 11, please.
Thanks, Tumi. So I think, yeah, we've had a few industry webinars over the course of April, where we've engaged on a few topics with regards to our RIMS implementation. I think just where we are at the moment, I wanted to just provide a sense of I suppose, some high-level numbers. So currently in the DocuBridge environment, we have either in e-submission or eCTD format, the legacy data migrated 7,873 applications that we've imported, and that accounts for 39,102 sequences. However, we are finding some data anomalies, specifically, I think more so on the e-submission side, where we've got quite a few non-ICH compliant CTD e-submissions that are causing some headaches and challenges with regards to importing those. So we have a list of e-submissions which our service provider is assisting us with working through those. It is quite a tedious and a laborious process to try and extract some of the relevant information that is required, and also bring in for a number of those then the relevant XML backbones through our software tool to allow then for us to import that and put that in a nice usable format for our evaluators to access. But this process is, as I said, quite a tedious one. It is taking quite some time, and I think also for us then, just the I suppose reinforces the thoughts around why we are taking in the new submissions only in eCTD format. It is a lot easier to control and validate that the appropriate and the correct format is then being submitted and then imported into the system to avoid these data issues that we are experiencing at the moment. I think some other numbers which I also wanted to share with the colleagues just as a matter of interest. So obviously this the previous set of data refers to the migrated information, and unfortunately I haven't included in that the numbers of e-submissions that we still need to pull in, and this is done on a daily basis. And we are prioritizing those e-submissions where we have got current review requirements, where the evaluators would need to then access previous submitted information. But for the new submissions that have come through so far, so there has been, I think, a total of, as of this morning, we had 556 application-related submissions, but they account for 690. So that already is a little bit more than what I was looking at last night. So at last night when I was doing the data stats, we had 676 submissions that actually came through. And of those, just to break it down, 53 of those were baselines, and then for new biologicals, new biosimilars, new chemical entities, new generics, new vaccines, those accounted for 200 submissions. And then we also have the basket, which then comprises, according to the current classifications, clones, replicas, line extensions, all of the different types of variations, and that accounted for 386 submissions. And then the renewal submissions accounted for 37. So for renewals, those could be new renewal submissions as well as then responses. So it's a mixture of, but quite a lot that we can see that's already moved in from the 16th of April. Very happy with the progress on getting those baselines through with the new variation submissions as well. And I think the challenges that we are still finding with some anomalies in the working documents folders, just with some of the naming conventions or some odd files, temporary files or data files that's accidentally included in those, causing upload failures. We are trying to fix those, but we are also trying to sensitize industry colleagues around those issues that we're finding, because this is obviously something that we cannot continue to panel beat and fix into perpetuity. We would need to get those QC checks done on those particular elements that's causing issues at the moment with the uploads. Then there are also some I think challenges that we've identified around the trigger file. And what we've discussed internally is that we would want to have just another webinar session with the industry colleagues. I think also to give a little bit more feedback in terms of what we're seeing, what some of the do's and the don'ts are, to try and also assist us to make sure that when the uploads come through, that the contact information in the trigger file reads correctly, that we have all of the information that is mandatory captured correctly. I must say it's a bit challenging where we've got some missing data still, related sequences not populated, or perhaps where we've got submissions that are coming in, and I know my team is grilling me about this, as specifically where we've got submissions coming in where an incorrect submission lead is selected, and then it from a systems perspective, it will route that specific application to one area of the business, whereas actually it was, I think I'm just thinking of one example where we received an application, it was logged as a new generic submission type. However, it was actually a renewal. So the alert and the prompts and the routing went to the new the Orthodox Medicines group instead of the renewals group. So these things are causing a bit of a headache for us, and I think it's important for us to just share back that information with the rest of industry in the webinar, just so that you can continue to help us refine this process as we then settle into the new ways of working within the system environment. One thing that I do just want to stress, as Silverani says, we are really using the validation checks quite diligently in this new software environment. And I think, the old adage is garbage in, garbage out. And this is quite an important thing for us to stress, is the information that we can take in, that we want to take in and have so far been uploading, is that we ideally want this information to be clean and be properly validated and comply with the requirements from a SAHPRA perspective, so that it's easier to manage. Unfortunately, I think some of the practices perhaps that we've seen in the previous environment, and it could be because there is quite a bit more automation that we've applied now, and there's quite a bit more in terms of, doing checks and balances, making sure that the system aids us in flagging things that are not compliant or meeting the criteria. And those then automatically it gets popped off to the side in terms of that failures. Whereas previously we might have had user intervention that allowed some of these non-compliant and inconsistent items to be processed through in order to get them into the processing stages. But we then, I think, had a challenge where we didn't close that loop by making sure that we feed back to the applicant, raise awareness around the issues, and make sure that we then fix those problems, which is what we are now diligently doing at this point, is that if we are picking up a problem, we're not perpetuating that problem by bringing it into the system. And what we are busy with, and what we will be busy with this week and probably half of next week, is to complete the reconciliation against all of the different trackers that we use internally, so that we can ensure that we now have that clean mirror image in terms of the tracking environment, as well as then what is on the DocuBridge environment. And for I think some of the issues that we already note that we know we will have to address then during next week and the week after, that there are strange things such as applications that started in ECTD, and you've got your baseline 0000, 0001 in ECTD, and then all of a sudden we saw in the previous software tool, oh, poof, there pops through 0002 as an e-submission. And then the very next thing is like you see that 0003 then was an ECTD again, and 0004 was an ECTD again. So unfortunately, in this environment, we don't allow those inconsistencies, and therefore we have missing sequences effectively in a specified specific format that we would need to reach out to the colleagues and make sure that they are then resubmitted in the relevant format that is consistent with the rest of the life cycle that is on system. So I think, yeah, these are some of the issues and the challenges that we have at the moment, to also then enable our colleagues internally to crack on and get on with the work that they need to do. So as much as we can, we have allowed some of the rules and permissions to be slackened a little bit, to allow us to just progress items, and that users can then do certain things whilst we are then busy with this data cleansing drive. And certainly we will need to engage with industry as well, where there are some of these submissions where we've got some inconsistencies with the ICH format for old CTD submissions. And of course, then, yeah, just making sure that any gaps that we've got where we had these funnies come through where, it was ECTD, then you have a e-submission pop through all of a sudden. Those ones, those missing sequences specifically, are causing us really a bit of a headache because, as I said, we've got I almost want to say the headmistress from a systems perspective is very strict. If there is a sequence missing, it obviously causes uploads in terms of subsequent sequences coming in. So really quite critical that we identify those gaps and then engage with you quite rapidly, so that the information that was previously submitted, we can then request for that to come through again. I'm not sure if there is perhaps then anything on the question side that we can maybe just attend to. As I said, we will also be setting up another webinar where certainly I think we can have much lengthier engagement over the 2 hours around some of, as I said, the do's and don'ts, the things that we've seen, and specifically just making sure from a trigger file perspective and moving forward, that we've got a good understanding around how this data needs to look, some of the quality check issues that we want to raise, and also I think then set the schedule for the ongoing webinars then for June, July, August, and September, because we want to also then tackle specific themes or topics that we want to work through in a little bit more detail, as they relate to the ECTD 3.0. As an example, I think one of the topics that we said internally looks like a really good one to actually have in one of the webinars is just maybe creating that clarity around the process for transfer of applicancy, what the relinquishing applicant would need to do, what the acquiring applicant would need to do, spend a bit of time on another webinar around the variations, how that needs to be managed, grouped, handled. And this, I think there was a question earlier around lead times for variation. So I think this specifically will really help us to start tracking and managing things making sure from a routing perspective and a reporting perspective, it's easier for us to tackle these variations that come in bite-sized chunks. Because I think what we have seen also is you've got a provisional timeline for a type 2, for instance. And I think when we have then these type 2 variations that are just bundled and bundled and bundled, we end up where I think with those big submissions, where I mean it's becomes unrealistic for a 120-day timeline to be applied for type 2 variation, because you've got multiple type 2s in one submission. It becomes, I think, challenging to report on those, because now you require a manual intervention around a individual needs to know that he needs to chop this up, or he needs to say that it's 120 days times I don't know, 3 or 4, whatever came in that bundle. It really becomes, I think, a problem for us to track and manage and report and provide proper and clear statistics. And I think even more so when you've got, goodness, yeah, some of the examples that we've looked at in the last few months, we had a particular variation that was submitted that comprised 16 changes. And they consisted of a number of type 1s, 1As, 1Bs, as well as type 2s. Was quite a complicated, how can I say, evaluation to complete. And you had 120 days that was applied to that particular variation. But of course, realistically, that is just completely unfeasible and unrealistic to have as an expectation around those submissions. So this is as well something that we internally need to reflect on. I think, changes on the guideline as it then aligns up with the ECTD 3.0. But also to do it in such a way that it makes sense, it is pragmatic, but allows all of us to have these variations submitted in a way that they can be managed, that they can be routed to the correct people for reviews through the system, and that we also can apply proper timelines around tracking each submission and making sure that each submission then stays on course in terms of that targeted service times. But these things, these ginormous things that we see coming in from time to time, where you've got basically an expectation of 120 days, it really isn't reasonable. And I think it's something where we have to look at that stick that we've created for ourselves, that we're being smacked with, and really look at how we can actually do this in a way that makes sense for both sides, but also where you don't necessarily want to submit a renewal to us. Sorry, not a renewal, a variation to us, where you potentially have one variation that is a bit more risky and potentially could be rejected, and it holds up all of the other items that you've submitted with that, which is potentially just par for the course and easy, and those typically should have been approved without a hitch. Because that also, I think, causes frustration on your side. But from our side, it really just doesn't make sense that those things are bundled together, because you've got something that you almost know, probably won't present a problem, might actually have just a few queries attached to it, and potentially is a change that the regulator would review and find acceptable. Whereas then there may be other changes which is a bit more risky in the sense of what we are changing, what we're proposing to change, and therefore requires then a more detailed review. Probably will generate a few more queries and has a risk of potentially being rejected. So also to try and create that understanding with industry, because you kind of want to submit it in a way that it runs through a very straightforward, seamless process. And I think this is then definitely for us a key topic to unpack with everybody during those subsequent webinars. But yeah, that's, I think, all from my side at the moment. Update-wise, I can maybe just go to the Q&A for questions. Dr. T, I don't know if you want to run through those. Yeah.
Yeah, if you could, we're going to maybe open this up for, let's take a few of yours, then from there we're going to open it up for the general Q&A. There's a lot, Christina. I don't know how we do it.
Look, as I indicated, we're happy to also maybe take some of these questions into the webinar that we've got, which I think probably will be towards the end of the month. So yeah, I don't know if there's a way to copy the questions.
Let me talk through a few. Let me read a few for you. Then let's see how we progress. But there is certainly a lot. And apologies if I don't get to a question. So one question here is, has SAHPRA tracker been compromised by the RIMS rollout? The tracker seems a bit stagnant. Then the next one is, since only ECTD submission allows, can urgent stock impacting e-submission format variations and response to recommendations be submitted by another platform? Then the next one, how do we complete the trigger file for instances where we have to upload 2 sequences in one submission? The next one is attended to, so I'm going to skip that. Who can we contact if an upload is still in the FTP portal and no automatic email has been received for the trigger file? Okay. Someone is echoing some questions. Okay, that's responded to. Okay, next one, and then I'll pause after this one, Christina. It's the longest one. It's a long one. I'm going to ask that we attend to it on the chat. Someone is saying industry needs refresher on ECTD training. Clearly, not everyone is doing it correctly. And then last one, Christina. How will ECTD be applied to Category D medicines in future? Do you want to take those while I scan through the others?
Yeah, certainly. So I think in just the first one, so we don't have any information feeding directly into the industry-facing trackers at the moment. It is still being updated by the colleagues as and when there are changes. And as I've indicated during our cutover process and with the challenges that we've also had with some data and being migrated a lot slower than I think what we would have liked because of some of the non-compliant formats. We have seen that there has been a slight slowdown also in our throughput. I think the internal colleagues has also discussed this and we've raised this and tried to find a workaround to try and move things through the work processing queue a little bit quicker. So we're hoping that we'll start seeing some positive improvement in the throughputs from this week. But I think, I don't think it's necessarily that the track is compromised. It's stagnant because it will only be updated when the status changes. And unfortunately, with us going through our teething process and also settling into the new ways of working, getting our evaluators used to the new environment, how we're creating documents, etc. We also will allow those colleagues to find their feet and make sure that they know what to do, how to do it, and that slowly we then start ramping back up to normal throughput. And hopefully I think from the discussions and the plan that we have and that we're following, we hope that we will have the environment a bit more stable by the end of June. So basically getting through that first 3 months of this transition so that we can start seeing those things trickle through as they normally have. In terms of applications previously in e-submission format, as I've just highlighted, there are quite some challenges with the way things were submitted before. Some of the inconsistent and non-compliant CTD formats that came to us as e-submissions, which is really causing havoc with the imports process. And I think that has really just strengthened the resolve around getting these applications now in a proper ECTD compliance structure. So I think we hope that in the last 10 weeks that have, what is it? I think 9 or 10 weeks that have passed since we published the initial communication in March, that there has been some activity to start getting the submissions in ECTD format. Some of the checks that we've done earlier this year in terms of time it takes to convert compliant CTD to ECTD, depending, I think, on the type of tool that is used. We have either between 48 hours to, well, let's say 2 business days to approximately 5 business days to then convert. And I think this is kind of the ask is for these products that potentially have stock issues, that we ensure that from an applicant perspective, then the planning is such that those products typically would get prioritized in your process to convert to ECTD. Unfortunately, as I said, because of the challenges we've got with e-submissions, the only format that we are importing at this stage is then the e-submissions. I think on some of the responses we have indicated before in the webinar that the applicants that was due to submit the responses over that freeze period could then approach us. But obviously anything that was due after the freeze period, we need the ECTD baseline, as well as then the ECTD variation plus the response there too, so that we can start working with the data in a more clean and structured way. In terms of trigger files for multiple sequences, I think the guide on the website, as well as the webinar session we had on trigger files, for each sequence that you submit, you've got to have a trigger file per sequence. So if we can please just stick with that, otherwise the uploads will fail. And you typically then, I think, have the situation where those files will not be collected from FTP because it's picking up errors then with the trigger file, or it's not reading the trigger file because the trigger file wasn't saved as an XML, but saved as a text file. And I think with the previous webinar we had, there was a bit more free form. We did indicate if colleagues note that there is a challenge with their applications being fetched off the FTP, that they can just send us an email. I have been working through all of the queries that we've got on the ECTD query mailing list, and also the ones that's been shared with me directly. I do have to apologize because obviously with some of the activities and some of the queries coming in, it is taking a bit of time for us to attend to everybody's question and answer those and also revert back. But as I said, if you've got a question or a query or a concern, please do feel free then just to raise it on those 2 platforms. We are attending to those and we will revert back to you then. But if your files have not been fetched from FTP, the typical issues that we're seeing that's causing this is the naming convention that is not correct for the application folder. And within the application folder, that we have a problem with the trigger file. So either the trigger file, as I said, is not an XML format. It was saved as a .txt. And then, of course, the automator doesn't read that at all. It will be a non-compliant submission, and we can't upload it or pull it off the FTP. So I think I would maybe ask if colleagues could just kind of check those things from a basic troubleshooting perspective. If all of those look fine and peachy, just to do us a screenshot then, and please do feel free to pop those queries through via email so we can look at it, do our own troubleshooting investigation, and then revert back to you with a solution. For the ones that we need to fix, obviously then it's easy for you to delete that application folder, do the fix, and then just please re-upload or resubmit the corrected file.
Yes, Christina, I'm going to ask that we pause it here because we're running out of time now. You did mention that you've got a workshop coming up.
I do. We will have one now at the end of May, and I think also for category D medicines, I actually owe Kaiser the presentation, which we will share with that working group so they can understand what we plan to do with category D, and also the process and the proposed submission formats for those. Thanks.
Thank you. Colleagues, I'm going to then ask that in the remaining 14 minutes, we just open up the platform for any questions. Please raise your hands. Dogozo will unmute you. If I could just see any questions on any of the matters covered. I see a hand from, I'm going to take, what can I see? All right. I'm going to take these 3 questions for now. From Andre, from Paul, and Suzanne, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. Just one question that I have is on the old or clinical variations that were submitted a long time ago that we don't see any feedback on, and also that we don't see on the industry-facing tracker. How can we find out what the status of that is? Because it has a direct impact on the ECTD baselines that we need to create for those products that are not yet in ECTD format. And then second to that, also related to a similar question, is type 2 variation that was submitted a long time ago in ECTD format, for which we have not received any feedback on yet. Can we take this as an opportunity to create the ECTD baseline and then resubmit that type 2 variation? So those are just the 2 questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you, so I'm going to ask that I'm going to type in the Sam's email address to address your first question, and then the colleagues will take your second one.
Hi, we just had a typed query regarding the ISO 13485 and the timeline for that to be implemented, especially for local companies, which is the deadline in April. Seeing that these guidelines will only be published maybe later on, is there going to be any consideration to extend that deadline for the ISO requirement? This is for devices.
Thank you, Bob. Suzanne?
Hi, thank you. Great presentation. Thanks very much. So my question kind of links to what Andre already asked, and it is also related to type 2 amendments. So we've got various type 2 clinical amendments that's been in the system for really long. They were submitted in ECTD, but we don't have a baseline ready just yet. They are planned for future, they're just not there yet. But it is safety submissions and safety amendments that we would obviously like to get implemented as soon as possible. And my question is if there's any discussion or concession that can be made for specifically items like safety amendments in the interest of time to get it submitted and approved, because we're now dealing with the RTQs.
Okay, I'm going to squeeze in Teresa.
Unity, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I do apologize, but I don't know which body, and my question is very specific to biologics. As it is an entire new, if you look at the global trend, inclusion of peptides and secretagogues, and I really just would like some direction as to how I can get involved to actually being in the know, because communication is sent, and I do appreciate the role that you're tasked with, and the compliant people really want to do things. Yes.
Apologies, it's getting loud where I am now. I didn't get Teresa's question, but I hope Christina or Silverani, you got it. Let's respond to those 4, please.
To me also, let me just maybe then talk to the question around type 2 variations that was previously submitted as an ECTD. So those would then follow the normal review process, and I can't speak on these ones specifically in terms of where they are and how far they are from being approved. But for those ones, the sequences on that variation that's already in ECTD, if there then is a response to that, or there is queries on that specific submission for that sequence, the responses would then just come through as ECTD to keep the information for that particular submission consistent in ECTD. I think the ask in terms of then following that with a baseline at a point in time. So I would imagine that if there is another variation that needs to be submitted for this product, that our normal process would then be followed in terms of that would then require the ECTD baseline with whatever the variation is that you will then be submitting next. So for these ones, I think Andre, Suzanne, that's previously been submitted as a type 2 in ECTD, they are already in the review process. And if there is then a query, the response to that query needs to then still come in as an ECTD in relation to that particular sequence. But as to the follow-on process from there, so any subsequent changes then would necessitate the baseline and then the new variation to be submitted.
Thank you. Silverani,
Okay.
take that other question.
Thanks, Chair. I think I've just heard the beginning of what Teresa has been saying in terms of biologicals, and it would appear that she requires guidelines or guidance, and these are available on the SAHPRA website. And if it is something, because I don't know what the second half of a comment was, but if it is about making a submission for biological, the information is there on the general information guideline as well as our biologicals guidelines for submissions, and then of course the different biologicals that they are to be submitted. And if there is anything further, she can drop an email and we can try and resolve. Thanks.
Thank you. We're going to take the last question because I do need to step off at 12. Nogatula, please.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Chair, and the rest of the SAHPRA colleagues. My question is with regards to the tracker, the variations tracker. For all type 2s that were submitted in e-submission, that don't appear on the tracker, and when you query with variations, then they don't also pick it up on their system, and they refer you to the variations upload, and variations upload never respond. How do we then handle that? Are we expected to resubmit, but now you're going to go back to the queue again? Could we just sort of get a bit of guidance? How do we handle such? Thank you.
Nokutula, I'm not sure when that type 2 was submitted, but the type 2s should be in ECTD format, so they should have come through the FTP. I don't know, perhaps you can maybe just drop me an email just to give me details on that, but I'm not aware, but again, I'm not that close to the core business processes. But from my understanding is we've got our type 2s coming in as ECTD. So if it was submitted as an e-submission, I think that might be what's caused the problem in the first place.
Okay, no, I'll drop you a line, Christina.
Okie dokie.
Okay, cool, thanks.
I see your hand is still up. Is it a legacy hand?
No, I'll take it down.
Colleagues, apologies, we have to wrap this up quite speedily. Let me just check. Joanna, unmute him for because I see the hand is still up.
Dr. T, it's because there's an outstanding response to your question.
Okay. Which part? Sorry. It's starting to be loud here, so I'm really battling now.
Yeah, we had asked the question regarding the ISO 13485.
Oh,
we
yes,
can have
yes,
a response on that, and if they will be granted a further extension due to guidelines being finalized later. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Apologies, Dimakazo.
That was responded to already some time ago by Kanyisile. The guidelines that we are referencing on the feasibility study has nothing to do with the ISO 13485 for the sites. So there is a communication on our website that speaks to ISO 13485 for the site, so there's no extension. It's not related to the guidelines that we are talking about. The guidelines referenced to now, or we are talking to today, it's related to product registration. While communication was shared years ago regarding ISO 13485 for the quality management system of the site. Thank you, Dr. Idemana.
Okay, great. And if you're still not clear, please do write to Dimakazo or Kanye. They'll assist them. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining this first RTF meeting. I do think our agenda was jam-packed. We did receive some questions from you that others we were not able to address in this meeting. But again, please utilize the working group platforms for you to have a lot of your questions addressed there, because then they are specific to the area. So I would really encourage that you participate or you have your members participate in those. Thank you so much for being available for this meeting. We will then have it again after 3 months. So this meeting will take place on a quarterly basis. Okay, thank you. And I'm going to ask that we then close the meeting. I hope you have a good day further. Thank you. Bye-bye.